Please join me in welcoming Lisa Rosinsky, our next poet.
I don't know about all this careful poetry. I don't know about all this careful poetry. There's brute strength sometimes involved in carving out what it is you're trying to say from the stubborn, solid mass of rubbish piled up around it. Like Michelangelo said, it's digging the sculpture out of the rock and it's letting it break free. Sometimes all this careful placing, tweaking, fine-tipped brushing is what keeps the colors dim, keeps the figure blurred. Sometimes all these nice arrangements of found objects into neat, symbolic art say nothing more than, look, I haven't got the strength to wield this hammer. I cannot bring myself to swing it down full force upon the boulder of everything I know. I cringe, wondering what beautiful beasts might leap out of this prison where I keep them unhewn. That one's for a friend of mine who very bravely quit his job in his mid-50s and took to the road with a cello and a book of poems and has been touring the country ever since. And I thought that deserved a poem, so he got one. This one's called Reckoning. The sun's a penny and the moon's a dime to my grandma, who counts the passing years in small change. There's always too much time, she says, when you're alone. And so she finds small things to arrange, charts a course and steers by the sun's penny, the moon's dime, and the nickel stars, slowly onward. Climbs a ladder built from stacks of tight-packed years like rolls of change. There's always too much time to cram into the jukebox. But on it winds the tired bluegrass jangle of the spheres. The sun's a penny and the moon's a dime. Grandma only likes my poems when they rhyme. Too old for new coin tricks, eyes and ears don't want to change. There's always too much time for small change, even when you're 89. The jukebox case reflects the sunset smears of the sun, a molten penny, the moon, a meager dime. Excuse me, who has change for too much time? This one's called Quilting. When I am old, I will be an old woman who quilts. I will be too stiff to chase down butterflies and shadows and other things that flutteringly escape collision. I will be calmer when I face the unruled page. I will let it have sometimes its vastness. And when I find myself bewildered by the scraps I have collected, chintz, brocade, flannel, satin, taffeta, and tweed, I will arrange them into rows and sew them firmly down. Knowing what I know, I will make of them a thing that keeps a body warm. I will also sometimes think of you and think of how we knew so well, so sweetly, how to make a thing that keeps a body warm. This one is a newer poem. It's also kind of a love poem gone wrong. Not science fiction, though. It's called Losing Faith. As if one summer day he stole the jade buttons off his lover's favorite dress and fled in his banged-up tangerine-filled pickup truck, fled to a colder land where cornstalks wavered in the breeze at night like candle flames as far as the eye could see. And he'd lie awake in the hard truck bed for hours, rubbing the bits of jade like prayer beads, trying to ignore the chilly rustling all around him, like the silk skirt of a woman running wild-eyed and barefoot in an unbuttoned dress, her breasts rising and falling, nipples hard as jade pursuing him through the starlight. This one is a brand new poem. I haven't read it before. Late September afternoon. The air's been wrung dry, no longer saturated with the clogged drain of summer. Sunshine spreads a crisp new palette. Every thought feels marbled, wedged between the ache and lure of memory. There's nothing you can do that won't erupt like this, some year down the road when your plates are shifting. A fat quartet of crows looks up as I approach across a patch of crinkly grass and leaves. Late summer crickets sing the same two notes over and over. The crows, not sure what to make of me, bounce toward the trees on their ungainly, backward-bending legs. You'd think that crows would strut or slink, but they don't. They bounce. I dig out my keys, slide into the car. In the past 3,000-something years of recorded history, I read today, only 268 have been free of war. The years bounce onward, backward. No matter how hard we try to stabilize, we slide. The engine turns over, I pull out of the lot and head for home. Leaves rise from the empty parking space like small brown birds in my wake. In my rearview mirror, I watch the crows dance back over and reclaim their spot. I roll down my windows, listening for when the crickets start up again. I'll do another love poem. This one's called Architecture of a Promise. Trading sidelong glances with the moon is one thing when you're slow and lonely and unsure, but it's a lengthy business and another thing entirely that I'm after. Moonbeams like mussel shells cradle bone-white light on one side and are engulfed by deepest purple on the other. And as for their joists, how do you paint the ceiling of a breath? Fingernail moon over the harbor and the scent of fresh bread baking toward the dawn. This is how I remember my city and our late nights full of flinging into, off of. I know I left, but later there were moments, pebbles and sea glass which I placed in your open palm, the way you touched trembling fingers to my face, my hair, my closed eyelids. Later, see, the splintered spokes become a wheel, and the space between them turns, churns, like roof beams stroke a nothing place into a different shape, a new emptiness, a room. I brought a lot of love poems. Here's one more. New England Cape House. Hard stuff you can't even break with a pickaxe, you said. Solid blue clay. That's what's under the cellar of your father's 18th century stone Cape House. Oxen hefted rock and packed dirt and 2 long stone beams. That's all it took to hold up generations of Maine farming families. They had to make the foundation stronger later, when people started accumulating more stuff. Back in the day, a rich person was lucky to own a bed, a chair, a dresser in the room upstairs, maybe. Nowadays, we hold on to all kinds of things. Those first weeks when it all started, we were free of things. A moment was the only clay we stuffed into the hot kiln of our desire. But that night, at your side, gazing up into the underbelly of the place where you were made, I wondered how much weight our foundation would hold if we could be the 2 beams holding up a life together. That was last year. Now you talk of buying a house of your own for us to live in. Time yawns slack-jawed toward the horizon, and this ugly space of many miles between us is not a poem. But neither is an old house with 2 people standing under it, hands thrust into their pockets to keep warm, gazing up at clay and rock. I can't lift a thing that heavy, but I can pack the dirt to smooth the path. Stone by stone, I am cheering on the oxen. Should I do one more? 2 more?
Absolutely.
All right. So I have one for my mother and one for my father. A couple of years ago.
You have to choose between them.
Because that would have been tough, although neither of them are here, so I wouldn't have had to worry too much about that. Although recording's for my mom, so Mom, this one's for you. A few years ago, I was writing poems about my parents all the time. Like every time I put pen to paper, it was my mother is, my father is. It turns out that there's a lot to say about your parents. This one is called My Mother is a Dancer. My mother is a dancer, and she stretches every morning for an hour, sitting on the floor, her legs spread wide. I can't do a split. Wearing nothing but a pair of ragged cotton underpants. Good thing you're not here, Mom. Pale from many washings, but once shell pink, and a loose gauze-thin t-shirt that's also been through the laundry since the days when she was washing my cloth diapers at the same time, as her belly was just beginning to bulge with the primordial swimming creature that became my younger sister. And those were the days when she learned the graceful maternity aerobics routine that she still performs each morning, eyes closed, navigating by the feel of memorized positions out of habit, and she tries to teach me how to stretch, because I asked. But my joints are stiffer, and my arms flail like a baby's when I copy the aquatic, stroking motions of her supple back bends and bridges, and I wonder yet again the things I always wonder about motherhood and age. This last one is for my father. My father is a sculptor. The smell of beer on Linda's breath, the fact that I could recognize that smell, the way they peered at me, Ed and Faye, as separate people, long before. The way Dad said he didn't know what New York meant until he left. The way I knew this was a poem. The way that Barbara showed me how a shell is really just the absence of what lived inside it once upon a time. She said, what really matters here is what we can't, and then was going to say, see, but dropped the shell. A piece broke off, and Linda said, you know, the shell can keep on growing when the critter's dead. They gave the piece to me and showed me how to use it as a tool to mark the edges of the clay, to meld one surface to another seamlessly. The way we passed by Luckett's, Lovettsville, and Leesburg on the way, the places where my parents lived when I was growing toes, as curled and salty as a conch's snail, folded, molded, welded, clay-like, warm. The way we finally squinting found the car by flashlight, hugged and said goodbyes, and drove into the night. The sculpted shell I made already melted into something else before we made it home. Thank you.